Chief Meteorologist Matt Zafino is back with us tonight because we can never get enough of him. He's going to talk about the bomb cyclone way out in the Pacific. Matt, what kind of power and intensity are we talking about right now with that storm?
Oh, this is big boy weather, Pat. This is a really strong storm, and you can watch it develop from early this morning. It didn't look like much. Now it sure does. You can see the whole curl of this cyclone. Any type of low pressure system is called a cyclone. Hurricanes are tropical cyclones. These are mid-latitude cyclones, technically. So the word cyclone doesn't mean tornado. It just means it's a storm, right? The reason it's called a bomb cyclone is because of the explosive, hence the word bomb, explosive development that they undergo to get to this point. Cold, dry air coming in behind it, very warm, very moist air ahead of it, and a strong jet stream powered like 180 miles an hour up there at the troposphere, all getting together in the same location to create this very, very strong storm. Here's a closer look. You can see it here, now spinning just north of the latitude of the Columbia River, basically, and it's going to continue to develop like that. We'll get our stronger winds when this cold front moves through and as the storm continues to move on off to the north. But the metrics on this are the really fascinating part to me, at least meteorologically, because look at some of these numbers. A bomb cyclone is defined by a pressure drop of that storm of 24 millibars in 24 hours. A millibar is a measure of pressure, just like pounds per square inch that you put in your car tire or your bike tires. So we measure in millibars. Now, 24 millibars in 24 hours is a lot. This one dropped that much in 3 hours today, Pat. Really remarkable. 50 millibars in 14 hours. And this may end up being a record low pressure for the Northeast Pacific. That was set back on October 24th, just a few years ago, 2021, when it dropped to 943. We already know this one's below 950, Pat, so we may be headed into record territory with this bomb cyclone.
Well, it's fascinating. And I know that there's some weather buoys that are out off the coast, maybe near the bar in the Columbia River. Oh, there's an example of one. Tell us about that and why they're so important.
Well, you know what, Pat? They're super important because this is how we get our measurements. There was a buoy just to the east of this particular storm. That's where I got those numbers from, about the pressure drop of 24 millibars in 3 hours, 50 millibars in 14 hours. It was actually dropping for a time this afternoon at 2 millibars every 10 minutes, which is just insane. And then the buoy stopped transmitting data because it probably got too stormy. It got blown around. These are what those buoys look like. And this one was in the news just a couple days ago because it's back in action. The buoy number is 46029. This is what they look like. So if you're thinking buoy, oh, it's like your average traffic cone. No, these are giant. This is about 10 feet across. The measurements are about 10 feet high. So these are big buoys. And you see these bars here? That's actually called a seal cage to keep seals and sea lions from hauling out and, hanging out on the buoy and making it, inoperable, which is what can happen there. So these are big buoys. There's the wind anemometer, about 10 feet in elevation above the ocean. And there are all the metrics on that. And this is what the data looks like. We get all kinds of great stuff. Wind direction, wind speed, that's wave height, that's the period of the wave, the average period of the wave, pressure, the pressure drop, average water temperature. So they're really, really valuable. And this isn't the only one, of course. All of these numbers here are from buoys that are offshore. See, they're getting 26-foot swells off the southern Oregon coast, 23-footers farther offshore. So they're very important here on the West Coast especially, and on the East Coast with hurricanes, to let us know what's going on out there.
Interesting. And it's super important for the people working out on the ocean, like the Columbia River bar pilots, or the Columbia bar pilots, not the river folks. Earlier today, I had a chance to ring up one of those folks, Captain Dan Jordan. He's a longtime member of the Columbia bar pilots, and I wanted to ask him what it's like when those waves get so big.
For the people at home, could you explain what it's like when the waves get 20 feet, 30 feet, whatever, and the wind starts blowing out there?
Yeah, it gets pretty wild. Yeah, just think about it. If a 20-foot wave is a 2-story house, and they say maybe a 15-second period, so that's a 2-story house coming at you every 15 seconds. So we make sure that there's nobody outside the ship, nobody on deck, because they could get seriously injured by the waves breaking over the top of the ship. Slows us down quite a bit, pushing into those kind of waves, and as far as getting on and off could be a challenge. We're mostly using a helicopter in those kind of conditions.
That's pretty cool. Now, that video was from the bar pilots, and it was when the weather was actually a lot calmer than what's happening out there right now. Right, Matt?
Absolutely, Pat. And yeah, I have so much respect for the work that they do. I mean, they're athletes. They have to be able to handle that kind of motion. And I loved how he put it, a two-story house coming at you every 15 seconds. So they rely on this data as well so that they know what they're going to be facing, especially with the buoys farther offshore. It's just incredibly important to commerce here in the Northwest, and the Coast Guard uses those as well to help let them decide when to close the Columbia River Bar or some of the other river bars along the Oregon coast. So it's super important data.
And we saw that boat that the video was taken from as it was next to the big ship. And you and I have both been on that thing, and that is an amazing piece of equipment.
It is unbelievable. Those things can turn on a dime. And the bar pilot captain that I talked to a couple years ago, he said when it's even worse when they're on the helicopter sometimes, because think about that. You're in a helicopter, there's a bunch of wind, the boat below you is pitching and fetching in those 20-foot seas, and you're trying to jump off a rope onto the deck. I mean, it's really remarkable.
You could not pay me enough.
No.
By the way, I do know they've closed the bar this afternoon, and they expect it to be closed a lot of tomorrow.
Makes sense.
Hey, thanks so much, Matt. And for the rest of you, we'll be right back right after this.